I'm Melissa Carter, 35, and yesterday my brother fell to his knees in my driveway sobbing uncontrollably. The same brother who punched me at his wedding reception 12 years ago called me a pathological liar and cut me completely out of his life because I dared to reveal what his precious wife said to me behind closed doors. Trash like you doesn't belong in our family. For over a decade, our entire family chose sides. Yesterday, an unexpected email changed everything, and the justice that followed was both devastating and vindicating. Before I get into this wild family saga, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe to join our storytelling community. This family revenge drama has more twists than a roller coaster, and you won't want to miss what happens when karma finally catches up. The trouble began at what should have been a joyous occasion, my brother James's wedding to Victoria. I had always been close to James, just 2 years apart in age, sharing everything from childhood adventures to supporting each other through our parents' messy divorce when I was 14 and he was 16. We were each other's rock through those turbulent years. Victoria had entered the picture 3 years before the wedding. From the beginning, she was charming and gracious in front of others, especially James and our extended family. She came from money, old money, and made sure everyone knew it subtly through designer clothes, casual mentions of family vacations to exclusive resorts, and the enormous diamond on her finger. I tried to like her genuinely. For James's sake, I smiled through her backhanded compliments and patronizing tones when we were alone. "Oh, Melissa, it's so admirable how you make do with so little," she'd say, while eyeing my apartment which I had worked hard to afford on my teacher's salary. The wedding planning brought Victoria's true colors into sharper focus. As maid of honor, I was subjected to increasingly hostile private interactions while she maintained her perfect image to everyone else. The final straw came the morning of the wedding. I arrived at the bridal suite early to help with preparations, finding Victoria alone. "I need to make something clear," she said, her voice ice cold despite her smile. "Once James and I are married, I'll be deciding who remains in his life. And trash like you doesn't belong in our family. He only keeps you around out of obligation, but I'll fix that soon enough." I stood frozen, stunned by her viciousness. When I found my voice, I asked, "Why do you hate me so much? What have I ever done to you?" Her answer chilled me. "You're a constant reminder of James's embarrassing past. The divorce, the financial struggles, all the parts of his life I'm helping him leave behind. He's moving up in the world now, and you're just dead weight." The ceremony proceeded without incident. I played my part perfectly, pushing down my hurt and confusion for James's sake. But at the reception, after several glasses of champagne and watching Victoria whisper in James's ear while shooting glances my way, I couldn't take it anymore. I pulled James aside, hoping my own brother would at least hear me out. "James, I need to tell you something about Victoria." I began, my voice shaking. "What is it?" he asked, already defensive. When I repeated what Victoria had said, his face changed in an instant. Gone was my loving brother, replaced by a furious stranger. "You've always been jealous," he hissed. "Victoria told me you might try something like this to ruin our day. She said you've been hostile toward her from the start, but I defended you. Now I see she was right." "James, please," I begged. "Why would I make this up? She called me trash, said I don't belong in your family. That's when it happened." In front of a small group of guests who had gathered nearby, James did something unimaginable. He shoved me hard then, as I stumbled back in my bridesmaid dress, his fist connected with my shoulder. It wasn't enough to seriously hurt me physically, but the emotional pain was devastating. "You're pathologically jealous and a liar," he shouted. "Don't contact me or Victoria ever again." Security escorted me out while I was still in shock. My parents were divided. Mom believed something wasn't right, but couldn't bring herself to fully take my side against James. Dad, seduced by Victoria's family connections that had already benefited his business, called me the next day to suggest I apologize for whatever misunderstanding happened. Within a week, James and Victoria had convinced most of our family and mutual friends that I had tried to sabotage their wedding out of jealousy, that I had a history of lying completely fabricated, and that I had even made advances toward one of James's groomsmen absolutely false. The narrative they crafted painted me as unstable and toxic. One by one, family members distanced themselves. Invitations to gatherings stopped. My social media messages went unanswered. The isolation was swift and nearly complete. Only my mother maintained limited contact, though. Even she seemed uncertain about what to believe. "Maybe you misunderstood what Victoria said," she suggested during one of our infrequent calls. "People say things they don't mean when they're stressed." I retreated into myself, focusing on my teaching career and building a new life with friends who knew nothing of the family drama. The pain never fully subsided, but I learned to live with it, carrying the weight of being disowned for simply telling the truth. The first year after being cut off from my family was the hardest. Every holiday, birthday, and family milestone that I missed felt like reopening a wound. I would scroll through social media, seeing pictures of gatherings I wasn't invited to. Thanksgiving dinners, Christmas celebrations, my niece's birth. Each photo was a reminder of what Victoria had successfully taken from me. My niece Emma was born 11 months after the wedding. I learned about her birth from a colleague who had seen James's announcement online. I sent a gift basket and card to their home, only to have it returned unopened. That final rejection broke something in me, and I decided then to stop trying. If my brother could so easily discard our bond of 25 years, perhaps it hadn't been as strong as I believed. I threw myself into building a new life. My third-grade classroom became my sanctuary. My students' innocent enthusiasm and the satisfaction of watching them learn gave me purpose. I moved to a different neighborhood in Boston, joined a community garden, took up pottery, and slowly cultivated friendships with people who knew nothing of my family tragedy. Sarah, a fellow teacher who quickly became my closest friend, was the only one I trusted with the full story. "Your brother will regret this someday," she would tell me. The truth has a way of surfacing. I didn't believe her. Victoria had crafted her narrative too perfectly, and James was completely under her spell. According to mutual acquaintances, Victoria had become increasingly involved in local charity work, hosting fundraisers that my parents proudly attended. She had positioned herself as the perfect wife, mother, and community member. Who would ever believe my side of the story against such a carefully constructed public image? Meanwhile, my parents' responses to the situation evolved in different ways. My mother occasionally reached out with awkward phone calls, clearly walking a tightrope between maintaining contact with me and not angering James and Victoria. She would share sanitized updates about family events, always careful to avoid any controversial topics. "Emma is doing well in preschool," she might say, or "your father's business is expanding," never acknowledging the elephant in the room, that I was being systematically erased from our family history. My father was less subtle. When a promotion at work moved me into a leadership position at my school, I sent him a brief email, hoping that professional success might bridge the gap between us. His response was crushing: "Congratulations. I'm sure you worked hard for this. Please respect our wishes regarding family events." That's when I understood. In their minds, I was no longer family. I was an outsider who had tried to damage their perfect son's happiness. The realization brought a strange kind of peace. I stopped seeking their approval and fully embraced my independent life. Over the next decade, I built a fulfilling career, eventually becoming the elementary school's vice principal. I dated occasionally, but found it difficult to trust after watching how quickly my own family had turned on me. My home became my haven, a small but charming house I purchased 7 years after the wedding incident with a garden that bloomed spectacularly each spring. But despite the life I'd built, the wound remained. Every time I achieved something significant, my master's degree, my promotion, buying my house, there was always that moment when I reached for my phone, wanting to share the news with James, only to remember that he was no longer in my processes. Life. The worst moment came 5 years into my exile when my mother was hospitalized with pneumonia. I rushed to the hospital only to find James and Victoria already there. The look of shock and anger on James's face made it clear I wasn't welcome. "What are you doing here?" he demanded in the hallway outside Mom's room. "She's my mother too," I replied, fighting to keep my voice steady. Victoria placed a manicured hand on his arm. "Let's not make a scene," she said, her voice dripping with practiced concern. "Your mother needs peace right now." The emphasis on "your" wasn't lost on me. I visited Mom when they weren't there, slipping in during early morning hours before work. She seemed genuinely happy to see me, but also anxious. "James doesn't know I'm still in contact with you," she confessed. "It would just cause more problems." That was the moment I realized the full extent of Victoria's control. She had not only severed my relationship with James, but had made my own mother feel she needed to hide our connection. The family that had once been my foundation was now built on secrets and lies. As the years passed, I created new traditions and found joy in unexpected places. I volunteered at an after-school program for kids from challenging backgrounds, finding healing in helping others who felt excluded and unwanted. I traveled during summers, exploring places I'd always wanted to see. I cultivated a chosen family of dear friends who showed up for me in ways my blood relatives hadn't. But I never stopped wondering what Victoria had told James over the years to maintain his anger toward me. What narrative had she crafted that was so powerful it could override 25 years of siblinghood? And I wondered if my brother ever had moments of doubt, ever questioned why I would have fabricated such a specific accusation on. In his wedding day, 11 years after the wedding, a mutual childhood friend ran into me at a coffee shop. After an awkward but friendly catch-up, he hesitated before saying, "You know, I've always wondered what really happened between you and James. The story never made sense to me." It was the first time anyone from my old life had expressed doubt about the narrative Victoria and James had spread. It gave me a glimmer of hope that perhaps someday the truth might matter again. The first indication that cracks were forming in James and Victoria's perfect facade came indirectly through my mother's increasingly transparent updates. About 8 years after the wedding incident, Mom began dropping hints during our calls that things might not be as idyllic as they appeared on social media. "Victoria's charity work keeps her very busy," she said during one call. "She's hardly ever home with Emma and James anymore." Another time, "James seems stressed lately. His firm is doing well, but he works such long hours. I wonder if it's really necessary or if he's avoiding coming home." These subtle comments painted a picture of growing distance between my brother and his wife. I tried not to feel vindicated. After all, many marriages go through rough patches, but a small part of me wondered if Victoria's true nature was finally becoming apparent to others. Then, during a rare lunch with my mother, when she visited Boston for a medical appointment, she revealed something more concrete. Victoria and James had a terrible argument at Emma's 10th birthday party, she confided, looking around the restaurant as if Victoria might be lurking nearby. Victoria was upset that James's gift to Emma, a telescope, was educational rather than special. She made Emma cry by suggesting the gift showed James didn't know his own daughter's interests. This glimpse into their private life confirmed what I had known all along. Victoria's charm was a performance, and when things didn't go her way, the mask slipped. Around the same time, Sarah, who had remained my steadfast friend through everything, came to me with unexpected information. Her husband worked at the same law firm as an old college friend of James, and through this connection she had heard rumors that Victoria was frequently seen around town with different men, none of whom were my brother. "It's just gossip," Sarah cautioned. "But where there's smoke..." I didn't know what to do with this information. Part of me wanted to find a way to warn James, but another part remembered the punch, the accusations, the years of exile. He had made his choice 12 years ago, choosing Victoria over me, choosing to believe the worst about his own sister rather than consider she might be telling the truth. So I said nothing and continued with my life, though I began paying more attention to my mother's comments about James and Victoria. The picture that emerged was of a household divided. James increasingly dedicated to his corporate law career, Victoria immersed in her social circle and charity events, and Emma caught between parents who barely communicated except to enormous stay. They maintain appearances. Then came the most significant sign that paradise was crumbling. About 11.5 years after the wedding incident, my mother called me in tears. "Emma ran away to my house last night," she said, her voice shaking. She and Victoria had a horrible fight. Victoria called her trash because Emma wanted to apply to public universities instead of the private ones Victoria had selected. The word hit me like a physical blow. Trash. Victoria's weapon of choice now turned against her own daughter. "What did James do?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Mom hesitated. "He told Emma she needed to apologize to her mother for being disrespectful." History was repeating itself. Victoria using the same cruel tactics, James enabling her behavior, and another young woman in the family being manipulated and gaslit. "Mom, you have to see the pattern," I said gently. "This is exactly what happened with me." There was a long pause on the line. "I know," she finally said. "I've started to realize that over the years. But James is so deep in denial, and your father still believes Victoria walks on water because of her family's connections." Emma stayed with my parents for 3 days before returning home, apparently having apologized as demanded. But something had changed. Mom reported that James had seemed troubled after the incident, less quick to take Victoria's side. It was a hairline fracture in his perfect world, but perhaps it was enough to let doubt creep in. Shortly after this incident, I noticed Victoria's social media presence becoming increasingly elaborate. More charity galas, more designer outfits, more perfectly staged family photos, with James looking progressively more strained in each one. It was as if she was working overtime to maintain the illusion as it began to slip. A former colleague who had moved to James's firm confirmed my suspicions. "Your brother works insane hours," he told me when we bumped into each other. "He's the first one in and the last to leave, even on Fridays. Most of the partners with his seniority are on the golf course by 3 p.m., but not James." The picture was becoming clear. James was avoiding his home life. Emma was reaching the age where she could see through Victoria's manipulations, and Victoria was scrambling to maintain control. It was an unsustainable dynamic. Then came the most direct sign that things were unraveling. 11 years and 10 months after being cut off, I received a text message from an unknown number. "Aunt Melissa, this is Emma. I found your number in Grandma's phone. Can we meet sometime? I have questions about what happened between you and Dad." My heart raced as I read the message. My niece, now almost 12, wanted to know the truth. After confirming it was really her by asking her to have my mother verify, I agreed to meet her at a cafe near her school the following week. Emma arrived looking so much like James had at that age that it took my breath away. She was cautious at first, but direct in a way that reminded me of myself. "Dad never talks about you," she said after we'd gotten our drinks. "When I ask, he changes the subject. But Grandma let something slip about you being kicked out of the family for telling a lie about Mom. Except, I don't think it was a lie, was it?" I chose my words carefully, not wanting to put her in the middle of adult conflicts. What makes you think that? Her eyes, so like my brother's, met mine steadily. Because Mom called me trash too when I wouldn't do what she wanted. And when I told Dad, he didn't believe me either. Just like Grandma said happened with you. As Emma spoke, I realized that the truth was finally finding its way to the surface, just as Sarah had predicted years ago. But I never could have anticipated the catalyst that would bring everything crashing down just 2 days after my meeting with Emma. It started with a phone notification, an email from an address I didn't recognize. Normally, I might have ignored it or checked it later, but something made me open it immediately. The subject line read simply, "You were right about Victoria." The sender was Rebecca Thornton, a name vaguely familiar from James's past. I eventually remembered she had been one of Victoria's bridesmaids, a college friend who had seemed uncomfortable around me at the wedding events. I hesitated before opening it, wary of anything connected to that part of my life, but curiosity won out. The email began formally, "Melissa, you don't know me well, but I was in your brother's wedding party 12 years ago. I've struggled with whether to send this for months, but after recent events, I can't stay silent anymore. You deserved better than what happened to you, and I was complicit in my silence. Victoria has not been faithful to your brother, ever. Including during their engagement, the week of their wedding, and continuously throughout their marriage. I know because I covered for her numerous times during the early years, believing her excuses and manipulations. What you may not know is that Victoria feared you from the beginning. She told several of us bridesmaids that you were too perceptive and might notice things others missed. She was right. You saw through her when everyone else was charmed. The incident at the wedding, I was nearby when you told James what Victoria had said to you. I heard every word, and I knew you were telling the truth because Victoria had said similar things about you to me privately. But I said nothing when James defended her, nothing when he physically assaulted you, nothing when you were escorted out. My silence has haunted me for years, but I convinced myself it wasn't my business. That changed last month when I discovered Victoria has been having an affair with my husband for the past year. The same manipulative tactics she used on your family, she used on mine. When confronted, she threatened to destroy my reputation just as she did yours. I'm attaching text messages, emails, and photos documenting Victoria's affairs over the years, including recent ones. There are dozens, Melissa. Your brother has been systematically betrayed while being convinced that you were the dishonest one. I don't expect forgiveness for my cowardice 12 years ago, but I hope this information helps restore your relationship with your brother. He deserves to know the truth, however painful. Rebecca attached were hundreds of screenshots, text conversations between Victoria and various men, emails arranging meetings, hotel receipts, and photos that left no room for doubt. Some dated back to before the wedding, others were from just weeks ago. The most damning was a video clip of Victoria at what appeared to be a charity event last month, slipping into a hotel room with a man who definitely wasn't my brother, followed by a timestamp showing them emerging hours later. I sat frozen, staring at my screen, my mind racing. This was vindication, concrete proof that everything I had suspected about Victoria was true. But what should I do with it? The hurt and rejection of 12 years couldn't be erased by an email, no matter how revealing. James had chosen to believe the worst about me, rather than question his precious Victoria. Why should I help him now? As I wrestled with these feelings, another email notification appeared, this time from Emma. "I told Dad about meeting you. He got really quiet and went to his study. Mom is furious." What should I do? My protective instincts immediately kicked in. Whatever my feelings toward James, Emma was innocent in all this. I couldn't let her become collateral damage in Victoria's manipulation games the way I had been. But before I could respond, my phone rang. It was my mother. "Melissa," she said, her voice shaking, "something terrible has happened." Victoria found out Emma met with you and she's threatening to send her to boarding school in Switzerland. James is finally standing up to her, but it's ugly. They don't know I'm calling you, but I think James needs the truth now, whatever it is. The decision crystallized in that moment. This wasn't about revenge or vindication anymore. It was about protecting Emma and finally breaking Victoria's toxic hold on my family. I forwarded Rebecca's email with all attachments to James with a simple message: I never lied to you. I'm sorry you have to learn the truth this way. Then I waited, alternating between anxiety and a strange calm. I had done what I could. The rest was up to James. 3 hours later, my phone rang again. James's number. After 12 years of silence, seeing his name on my screen was surreal. My hand shook as I answered. James. The sound that came through wasn't words, but ragged breathing followed by something I hadn't heard since we were children dealing with our parents' divorce. My brother crying. Melissa, he finally managed. Can I see you, please? I need to. I have to. His voice broke. Where are you? I asked, already reaching for my keys. Parked down the street from our house. Victoria's inside, screaming, throwing things. Emma's with Mom and Dad. I couldn't. After I saw those emails, those pictures, I couldn't stay there. Come to my place, I said, giving him the address. We'll talk. I know you're all on the edge of your seats right now, and I promise we're getting to the most intense part of this story. The confrontation that's about to happen changed my life forever. If you're feeling this emotional roller coaster, hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed, because what happens next shows exactly how karma eventually catches up to everyone. Are you Team Melissa or Team Victoria at this point? Let me know in the comments before we continue this wild family drama. An hour later, James's expensive sedan pulled into my driveway. Through the window, I could see him sitting motionless behind the wheel, gathering courage. The confident, successful lawyer was nowhere to be seen. This was a broken man confronting the collapse of everything he'd believed in for 12 years. When he finally made his way to my door, the sight of him was shocking. James had always been immaculately groomed, but the man before me had loosened his tie, his hair was disheveled, and his eyes were red-rimmed from crying. He stood on my porch, a stranger who looked like my brother, uncertain whether he was welcome. Thank you for letting me come, he said, his voice hoarse. I stepped aside to let him in, my emotions too complex to name. Anger, pity, vindication, and a residual love that 12 years of separation hadn't managed to kill completely. Nice house, he commented awkwardly, looking around my living room with its bookshelves and comfortable furniture. A teacher's modest but cherished home. James, I said quietly. Why are you here? He sank onto my couch, head in his hands. To apologize. To beg for forgiveness I don't deserve. To try to understand how I got it so wrong. He looked up at me, his expression raw. She's been lying from the beginning, hasn't she? Not just about the affairs, but about you. I sat across from him, maintaining some distance. Yes. Why? He asked, desperation in his voice. Why would she target you specifically? What did you ever do to her? I saw her, I said simply. From the beginning, I saw behind the mask. She knew I wasn't fooled by the perfect wife act, and that made me dangerous. She needed complete control over your life, and I was the one person she couldn't manipulate. James nodded slowly, the realization visibly washing over him. All these years. All the things she said about you. That you were unstable, jealous, that you'd made scenes at family events I wasn't present for. His voice trailed off. I believed her. Every word. You chose to believe her. I corrected gently. There's a difference. The things Rebecca sent. He continued, looking physically ill. Victoria's been cheating since before we were even married, all while convincing me that she was the victim of your jealousy. And God, Melissa, I punched my own sister. I cut you out of my life. I robbed Emma of her aunt. The mention of Emma shifted something in me. How is she? Your text said, Victoria threatened boarding school. James wiped his eyes. She's safe with mom and dad for now. Victoria went ballistic when she found out Emma had contacted you. Said you'd poison her against us. He laughed bitterly. Against her, she meant. When I got Rebecca's email, I confronted Victoria with it. She didn't even deny the affairs, Melissa. She just said I should be grateful she gave me social status and Emma. That sounds like Victoria, I said. What will you do now? Divorce her, he said firmly. I've already called my law firm's best family attorney. But I'm terrified. Victoria's vindictive and she'll try to use Emma as a weapon. And her family has connections everywhere. So you came here for? I left the question hanging. For forgiveness I don't deserve, he repeated. And he hesitated to ask if you'd be willing to testify about what really happened 12 years ago. Rebecca's evidence covers Victoria's infidelity, but your testimony would establish her character, her manipulation. It would help with custody. The request stunned me. After 12 years of being branded a liar by this man, he was now asking me to publicly tell the truth I'd been punished for speaking. You're asking a lot, I said carefully. You disowned me, James. You let Victoria isolate me from our entire family. You called me pathological. You hit me, and now you want my help. He flinched at each accusation but didn't look away. Yes, he said simply. Not because I deserve it, but because Emma doesn't deserve to be raised by Victoria. You met her. You know she's a good kid. She's already seeing through Victoria's manipulations, and that makes her vulnerable. Victoria will crush her spirit like she tried to crush yours. It was the right argument, perhaps the only one that could have swayed me. Whatever my feelings toward James, Emma was innocent. I'll do it for Emma, I said finally. Not for you. Relief washed over his face, quickly replaced by shame. I understand. And Melissa, I am so sorry. I know those words are inadequate, but they're true. When I think about what I did to you, what I allowed to happen. His voice broke again. Something shifted in that moment. Not forgiveness exactly, but a door opening that had been sealed shut for over a decade. It wasn't just you, I said softly. Our parents, our extended family, they all chose to believe the worst about me rather than question Victoria's perfect image. Mom's been having doubts for years, James admitted. She tried to talk to me about you several times, but I shut her down. Dad, he was blinded by Victoria's family connections. They've brought him a lot of business. And now, when they learn about the affairs, Mom already knows. She's the one who picked up Emma when everything exploded this afternoon. Dad. James sighed. He'll probably take it harder than I did. His business is tangled up with Victoria's family investments. We talked for hours, piecing together 12 years of separate lives. James described how Victoria had systematically isolated him from friends who questioned her behavior, how she'd engineered coincidental meetings with people who could advance his career while pushing away anyone who knew him before her. The pattern was clear. She had created a world where she controlled every aspect of his life, just as she had tried to do by eliminating me. As night fell, James received a barrage of texts from Victoria. Threats, pleas, manipulations cycling through as she realized her carefully constructed life was imploding. He turned off his phone. I can't go home tonight, he said wearily. I'm not strong enough to face her yet. Take the guest room, I offered, surprising myself. We have a lot more to talk about tomorrow, and you should be close to Mom and Dad's for Emma's sake. As James headed upstairs, he paused. Did you ever think we'd speak again, after what I did? No, I answered honestly. But I never stopped missing my brother. That night, I lay awake wondering if reconciliation was truly possible after such betrayal, or if the damage was too deep to ever fully repair. The road ahead would be complicated. Family therapy, legal battles, rebuilding trust. But for the first time in 12 years, there was a path forward where before there had been only a wall. The weeks following James's arrival on my doorstep were a whirlwind of legal meetings, family therapy sessions, and emotional reckonings. Victoria, true to form, unleashed a campaign of destruction once she realized James was serious about divorce. First came the character assassination. She contacted James's law partners claiming he had become unstable and was having a breakdown. She reached out to Emma's school suggesting that James was an absent father who suddenly wanted to play the hero. She even tried to contact my school administration with vague accusations about my professional conduct, though thankfully my years of exemplary service protected me. Then came the financial warfare. Victoria emptied their joint accounts before James could secure them, taking nearly $200,000. She maxed out their credit cards on luxury purchases and attempted to transfer properties into her name. James's quick legal action blocked most of these moves, but the message was clear: she would burn everything to the ground rather than lose control. The most painful tactics involved Emma. Victoria alternated between love-bombing her daughter with extravagant gifts and guilt-tripping her with tears and accusations of betrayal. "After everything I've sacrificed for you," she would say, "you're choosing your father, your aunt who doesn't even know you." Emma, showing remarkable resilience for a 12-year-old, saw through the manipulation. "She's always been like this," she told me during one of our now frequent visits. "When I do what she wants, I'm her perfect princess. When I don't, I'm ungrateful and disrespectful." James filed for divorce, citing adultery and emotional abuse. Victoria countered with claims that James was the unfaithful one, completely fabricated, and that he was emotionally unstable. The case was assigned to Judge Marissa Hernandez, known for her no-nonsense approach to high-conflict divorces. It was a stroke of luck. Judge Hernandez was one of the few judges in the district not socially connected to Victoria's family. My testimony was scheduled for the third day of proceedings. Victoria's attorney, a shark in an expensive suit, had promised to destroy the credibility of the estranged sister with a grudge. James's lawyer had prepared me thoroughly, but nothing could ready me for the feeling of walking into that courtroom and seeing Victoria in person for the first time in 12 years. She looked exactly as I remembered. Expensively dressed, perfectly groomed, her face a mask of dignified suffering. When our eyes met, she gave me the slightest smile, confident in her ability to maintain the lies that had worked for so long. On the stand, I told the simple truth. Victoria's trash comment before the wedding, James's reaction, the years of isolation that followed. Victoria's attorney attempted to paint me as jealous and vindictive, suggesting I had fabricated the story out of envy for her lifestyle. "Miss Carter," he asked, with practiced condescension, "isn't it true that you resented Miss Post Montgomery's wealth and social status? That you felt she was taking your brother away from the modest lifestyle you shared growing up?" "No," I replied calmly. "I resented that she called me trash and told me I didn't belong in my own family. I resented that she systematically isolated my brother from anyone who might question her behavior. And I resented that when I told the truth, I was punished while she was rewarded." The attorney changed tactics, bringing up ancient history. A time in high school when I'd been caught skipping class, suggesting this proved I was dishonest by nature. Judge Hernandez shut that line of questioning down immediately. "Counselor, unless Miss Carter's high school attendance record directly relates to the matters before this court, move on," she ordered. The turning point came when Rebecca Thornton testified. Victoria had clearly not expected her former friend to appear in person, and the shock on her face was visible to everyone in the courtroom. Rebecca provided dates, locations, and names of Victoria's affairs, including the recent one with her own husband. She also confirmed hearing Victoria call me trash on multiple occasions, validating my 12-year-old claim. Most damning was her revelation about Victoria's prenuptial agreement with James. She boasted to me that she'd found a loophole, Rebecca testified. The infidelity clause only specified that she would forfeit certain financial benefits if she had affairs that caused the marriage to end. Her plan was always to make sure if the marriage ended, it would be for some other reason. James's instability or neglect or growing apart. She was very calculating about it. As Rebecca spoke, Victoria's carefully maintained composure began to crack. Her eyes darted around the courtroom, likely calculating who else might betray her, what other evidence might surface. When Victoria herself took the stand, her performance was initially flawless. The wronged wife, confused by her husband's sudden change in behavior, concerned only for her daughter's well-being. But Judge Hernandez had seen it all before. "Miss Montgomery," she interrupted during one particularly dramatic moment, "this court has heard substantial evidence regarding your extramarital affairs. Are you testifying under oath that these allegations are false?" Victoria hesitated just long enough for everyone to notice. "I'm testifying that my husband was emotionally absent for years," she deflected. "That whatever mistakes I might have made were in response to his neglect." Judge Hernandez wasn't having it. "Please answer the question directly. Are you denying the affairs documented in the evidence presented to this court?" Victoria's mask slipped completely. "Those were private arrangements that had nothing to do with my marriage," she snapped. "James was always focused on his career. What was I supposed to do? And that sister of his was always trying to undermine me from day one." The outburst was revealing in ways Victoria hadn't intended, and her attorney quickly requested a recess. But the damage was done. The cool, collected victim was gone, replaced by an entitled, angry woman who felt justified in her deceptions. The final nail in the coffin came from an unexpected source. Emma, with the court's permission and a child advocate present, provided a written statement about her experiences living with Victoria. She described the constant criticism, the emotional manipulation, and specifically mentioned the trash comment Victoria had made when Emma expressed interest in public universities. The same word Victoria had used against me 12 years earlier. After 2 weeks of testimony, Judge Hernandez ruled decisively in James's favor. He received primary custody of Emma, with Victoria granted supervised visitation pending completion of therapy. The prenuptial agreement was upheld, with the infidelity clause enforced, limiting Victoria's financial settlement significantly. Most importantly, the judge included in her ruling a statement acknowledging that Victoria had engaged in a long-standing pattern of manipulation and deceit that damaged multiple family relationships. As we left the courthouse after the verdict, Victoria stood alone, abandoned by the social circle that had once validated her every move. When she saw me with James and Emma, something in her broke. She stormed over her designer heels, clicking on the marble floor. "You think you've won," she hissed. "You've ruined everything I built. Are you happy now?" Before I could respond, Emma stepped forward. "You ruined it yourself," my niece said with remarkable poise. "You hurt everyone who tried to love you, including me." Victoria flinched as if struck. For a moment, I almost pitied her, standing alone with her facade shattered, facing the consequences of her actions, perhaps for the first time in her life. Then she turned and walked away, her shoulders rigid with unrepentant anger. "Do you think she'll ever change?" James asked as we watched her go. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "But that's not our problem anymore." Yesterday marked 1 year since the divorce was finalized, 1 year of slow, painful but genuine healing for our family. James and Emma have settled into a new routine in a modest house not far from mine. My brother, humbled by his experience, has scaled back his work hours to be more present for his daughter. Emma has blossomed without Victoria's constant criticism, discovering interests in science and photography that had been previously dismissed as common. Our parents have undergone their own reckonings. Mom tearfully apologized for not fully believing me for maintaining the pretense of family harmony at the cost of excluding her own daughter. I knew something wasn't right, she admitted during a difficult conversation 6 months ago, but it was easier to hope you were wrong than to confront what that would mean about James's marriage. Dad's journey has been more complicated. Victoria's family did indeed withdraw their business connections, causing temporary financial strain. For several months, he maintained that both sides made mistakes, unable to fully acknowledge his role in my ostracism. It was Emma who finally broke through his defenses. "Grandpa," she said during a family dinner, "did you know Mom called Aunt Melissa trash just like she called me trash? Why didn't you believe either of us?" The direct question from his granddaughter accomplished what adult conversations couldn't. Dad broke down, finally admitting that he had prioritized business connections over family loyalty. His apology, when it finally came, was profound in its simplicity. "I failed you as a father, and no business success could ever be worth that." Victoria has largely disappeared from our lives, though we hear occasional updates. She remarried quickly. A wealthy developer who seems unaware of or unconcerned with her history. She rarely uses her visitation rights, with Emma appearing only for occasions that offer social media photo opportunities. Emma, wise beyond her years, recognizes the pattern and has begun working with a therapist to process her complicated feelings about her mother. Rebecca Thornton and I have developed an unexpected friendship. Both hurt by Victoria in different ways, we've found common ground and support in each other's experiences. Her divorce was finalized shortly after James's, and she's slowly rebuilding her life just as I helped James rebuild his. The most profound healing has been between my brother and me. We've spent countless hours in conversation, sometimes painful, sometimes cathartic, reconstructing our bond one difficult discussion at a time. During one such conversation, James confessed what had truly happened after I told him about Victoria's trash comment at the wedding. "She found me immediately after you walked away," he recalled. "She was crying, saying you had threatened her, that you'd always hated her, and had finally shown your true colors. She claimed you said she'd never be good enough for our family, and that you'd make sure I regretted marrying her. And you believed that I asked, still struggling to understand." "I was already primed to," he admitted shamefully. "She'd been planting seeds for months. Little comments about how you seemed resentful of her, how you behaved differently when I wasn't around. By the time you told me what she'd actually said, I was already convinced you were jealous and resentful. I couldn't see that she was describing her own behavior and projecting it onto you. These revelations haven't erased the pain of 12 lost years, but they've helped me understand how Victoria's manipulation worked, how she isolated her targets and turned loved ones against each other. That understanding has been crucial to forgiveness, though the process remains ongoing." Last week, James came to my house again. Not in crisis this time, but with purpose. He fell to his knees in my driveway, overcome with emotion as he presented me with a small wooden box. Inside was a bracelet I recognized immediately, our grandmother's silver charm bracelet that had been promised to me but somehow disappeared after her death 10 years ago. Victoria took it. James explained, wiping tears from his eyes. "She found out it was meant for you and hid it. I discovered it while clearing out the last of her things from a storage unit. It belongs to you, Melissa. It always did." As I fastened the bracelet around my wrist, feeling the weight of its family history, I realized how far we had come. The healing isn't complete. Perhaps it never will be, entirely. There are still moments when resentment flares, when I remember the milestone events, miss the years of isolation. But there is also forgiveness, understanding, and a family slowly being restored. Emma has become the unexpected center of this restoration. My niece, now 13, brings James and me back to our own childhood with her curiosity and resilience. Through her, we've rediscovered the simple joys of family. Game nights, holiday traditions. inside jokes that Victoria would have deemed beneath her sophisticated tastes. Yesterday, as James knelt in my driveway, Emma watched from the car, witnessing another step in our family's healing journey. Later, she asked me a question that perfectly encapsulated what we've all learned. "Aunt Melissa, do you think bad people know they're bad?" I considered my answer carefully. I think Victoria doesn't see herself as bad even now. In her mind, she was always justified. That's what makes manipulation so dangerous. The people doing it often believe their own stories. Emma nodded thoughtfully. "I'm glad the truth came out, even if it took so long. Dad says you never stop being kind, even after everything. The truth is more complicated, of course. There were years of anger, bitterness, and grief. But standing on the other side now, I can see that the greatest revenge against someone like Victoria isn't hate. It's rebuilding what she tried to destroy, creating something stronger and more genuine than her carefully constructed illusions. If you've stayed with me through this entire story, I can't thank you enough. Family betrayal cuts deeper than any other kind, and maybe some of you have experienced something similar in your own lives. Has karma ever delivered justice in your family situations? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories with unexpected twists. And don't forget to share with anyone who might need to hear that. Sometimes, even after years of injustice, the truth does eventually come to light. Thank you for listening, and remember, blood doesn't always make family, but love and truth do. See you in the next video.